Every reaction you've ever had that you regret. That moment you snapped. That moment you argued back. That moment you let your face show exactly what you were feeling. That wasn't weakness of character. That was an untrained mind operating in a world that punishes the untrained. And the world showed you no mercy for it. Machiavelli didn't warn about enemies with weapons. He warned about enemies with patience. Men who simply wait for you to lose control because they know that when you react, you hand them the keys to your destruction. Your emotion is not your strength. It is the door they walk through to own you. The strategist doesn't move when he's angry. He moves when it's useful to move. He doesn't speak when he's hurt. He speaks when silence has already done the damage he intended. There is a cold, ruthless discipline behind every man who has ever held real power. And that discipline begins not in the boardroom, not on the battlefield, but inside the skull, in the six in between your ears, where your entire fate is decided before a single word leaves your mouth. You are not here to feel your way through life. You are here to think your way through it. Calculated, composed, untouchable. Before we go deeper, drop mental fortress in the comments if you're ready to rewire your mind. Number 2, the fool reacts. The strategist waits. There is a moment, a split second between what happens to you and how you respond to it. That gap is everything. That gap is where fools destroy themselves and where strategists build empires. The fool fills that gap with emotion. He fills it with pride, with rage, with the desperate need to prove something to someone who isn't even worth his attention. And in that single moment of filling that gap with feeling instead of thought, he loses. Not sometimes, every single time. Understand this. Reaction is surrender. The moment you react, you have already admitted that the outside world has more control over your internal state than you do. You have handed the wheel to whoever or whatever triggered you. Your boss, your enemy, a stranger on the street. They are now driving your life while you sit in the passenger seat, wondering why everything keeps going wrong. This is not strength. This is slavery dressed in the costume of emotion. Machiavelli studied power at its rawest, most brutal level. He watched princes rise and collapse, and the ones who collapsed were never brought down by superior enemies. They were brought down by their own impatience, their own visible frustration, their own need to react before they had thought. The prince who could sit in stillness while chaos swirled around him. That man was untouchable. Not because he felt nothing, but because he had mastered the discipline of revealing nothing until the moment served him perfectly. That is the cold truth nobody teaches you. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is warfare. It is the most aggressive move a man can make to look at everything attempting to destabilize him and choose deliberately to remain unmoved. That composure alone shifts the entire dynamic of any room, any conflict, any confrontation. People feel it, they cannot explain it, but they feel it and they respect it in a way they will never respect noise. Train the gap. Own the gap. The gap is your throne. Drop "I am unstoppable" in the comments if this is already hitting different. Number 3, silence is the weapon they never see coming. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that speaking up means strength, that having the loudest voice in the room means power, that if you don't defend yourself immediately, if you don't clap back, if you don't match every attack with an equal response, you are weak. You absorb that lie so deeply that silence now makes you uncomfortable. You feel the urge to fill every quiet moment to explain yourself, to justify your position, to make sure everyone in the room understands where you stand. And that urge, that single compulsive urge, has cost you more than you will ever be able to calculate. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. When a man who understands power goes quiet, he doesn't disappear. He expands. He takes up more psychological space in that moment than any shouting, explaining, defending man ever could, because silence forces the other person to think. It forces them to question. It makes them wonder what you know that they don't. It makes them second-guess their own move while you haven't even revealed yours yet. You are playing chess while they are still arguing about the rules of the game. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does not say everything he thinks, but he always thinks everything he says. Read that again and let it settle into your bones. Every word that leaves your mouth is intelligence given to the enemy. Every emotional outburst is a map of your vulnerabilities handed over freely. Every unnecessary explanation is a confession that you need their approval to feel secure. The strategist gives none of that away. He curates what leaves his lips the way a general curates information before a battle, with precision, with intention, with absolute control over what the other side gets to know about him. There is a particular kind of man who makes others deeply uncomfortable without ever raising his voice, who commands rooms without demanding attention, who wins arguments he never verbally entered. That man is not cold by nature. He is cold by design. He built that stillness deliberately, brick by brick over years of choosing discipline over impulse, strategy over reaction, silence over noise. That man becomes a fortress. And a fortress does not beg to be understood. It simply stands unmovable while everything weak crumbles around it. If silence is now your new weapon, comment, "I move in silence and let the world feel what you're becoming." Number 4, emotion is information, not instruction. Here is something that will completely reframe the way you operate from this moment forward. Emotion is not your enemy. Let that land before you misunderstand it. The goal was never to become a hollow, feeling nothing machine walking through life, disconnected from everything human inside you. That is not power. That is damage. The true Machiavellian understanding of emotion is far more sophisticated, far more ruthless, and far more useful than simply suppressing what you feel. The goal is this: feel everything. Reveal nothing and use it all. Every emotion you experience is data. Anger tells you that a boundary has been crossed or a value has been violated. Fear tells you that something you care about is under threat. Frustration tells you that your current approach is not aligned with your desired outcome. Jealousy, and most men won't admit this, jealousy tells you exactly what you want, but haven't yet claimed for yourself. These are not weaknesses. These are signals. The problem was never that you felt them. The problem was that you let them drive. You put raw, unprocessed emotion in the driver's seat and then acted surprised when the vehicle crashed. The fool treats emotion as instruction. He feels angry and immediately acts angry. He feels disrespected and immediately performs disrespect back. He feels afraid and immediately either freezes or overcompensates with aggression that fools nobody. He is a puppet and his own nervous system is pulling the strings. Every person around him who understands even the basics of human psychology can read him, manipulate him, and redirect him with nothing more than a carefully placed word or a deliberate provocation. He is not living his life. He is reacting to it, which means everyone else is writing the script while he just delivers the lines. The strategist does something entirely different. When emotion rises, and it will rise because he is human, he acknowledges it internally with complete honesty. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't perform toughness by pretending it isn't there. He looks at it clearly, identifies what it is telling him, extracts the information, and then makes a conscious, calculated decision about whether acting on it serves his larger objective. Most of the time, it doesn't. Most of the time, the most powerful response available to him is to pocket that emotion. File the intelligence it provided and move with the cold composure of a man who is 3 steps ahead of everyone watching him. This is what Machiavelli understood about the princes who survived. They were not emotionless. They were emotionally intelligent in the darkest, most strategic sense of the phrase. They used their anger to identify threats without announcing those threats to the enemy. They used their fear to sharpen their preparation without showing the enemy what they were afraid of. They weaponized their own inner world while keeping the exterior surface completely unreadable. That is a level of self-mastery that most men will spend their entire lives never approaching. Not because they are incapable, but because nobody ever told them this was the game being played. You are being told now. The question is what you do with it. Your emotions are intelligence reports from the front line of your life. Read them, analyze them, act on the strategy they inform, never on the feeling itself. That single shift will make you more dangerous, more composed, and more untouchable than 90% of the people you will ever encounter. Comment, "My mind is my weapon right now." Because that is exactly what it is becoming. Number 5, the art of reading people before they open their mouth. Power without perception is blind. You can have all the composure in the world, all the silence, all the emotional discipline, and still lose because you misread the room. You misread the person sitting across from you. You misread the motivation behind the words being spoken, the agenda hiding underneath the smile, the calculation wrapped inside the compliment. The man who cannot read people is operating in the dark. And the dark is where predators hunt, not where strategists thrive. If you are going to move through this world with real lasting power, you must develop the ability to see what people are before they decide to show you. Machiavelli was obsessed with human nature, not the romantic version of it, not the version that assumes people are fundamentally good and honest and transparent. He studied the raw, unfiltered truth of how human beings actually behave when their interests are at stake. And what he found was consistent across every court, every kingdom, every power structure. He observed, people are always communicating their true intentions. Not through their words, through their patterns, through the gap between what they say and what they do. Through the way they treat people who cannot benefit them, through the subjects they avoid, the questions they deflect, the moments where their composure slips just slightly before they pull it back together. Everything is signal. Nothing is noise if you know how to listen. Start watching people the way a strategist watches a battlefield. Not emotionally, not judgmentally, but analytically. When someone speaks, don't just process the content of what they're saying. Ask yourself why they are saying it now in this way to you specifically. What do they want from this interaction? What are they trying to make you feel? And why does making you feel that serve them? Is the flattery genuine or is it positioning? Is the aggression real or is it a test to see how easily you can be rattled? Is the vulnerability they're displaying authentic? Or is it a manipulation tool designed to lower your guard and make you feel responsible for their emotional state? These are not paranoid questions. These are the questions that separate the man who is played from the man who does the playing. Body language is a confession that the mouth never makes. The direction a person's feet point when they're talking to you tells you where they actually want to be. The micro-expressions that flash across a face for a fraction of a second before the social mask snaps back into place. Contempt, fear, excitement, deception. Those are the truth before the performance begins. The person who interrupts constantly is not just rude. They are telling you that your words feel threatening to their sense of control. The person who never maintains eye contact during specific topics is not shy. They are telling you that those specific topics carry weight. They don't want you to see. Read the body. The body does not know how to lie the way the mouth does. But here is the deepest layer. And this is where true dark psychology separates itself from surface-level observation. The most dangerous thing you can do once you have read someone accurately is let them know you have read them. The moment you reveal your perception, you lose your advantage. You have shown your hand. You have told them to adjust their mask, to tighten their performance, to be more careful around you going forward. The strategist sees everything and registers nothing visibly. He files the intelligence quietly, adjusts his approach internally, and continues to let the other person believe their performance is working. Because a person who thinks their mask is holding will keep revealing themselves indefinitely. See everything, show nothing. Know the room before the room knows you. Drop "I see what others miss" in the comments because that is the exact ability you are now sharpening. Number 6, control the narrative or someone else will. There is a war happening around you right now that most men are completely unaware of. It is not fought with fists or weapons or open confrontation. It is fought with perception, with framing, with the story that exists about you in the minds of the people who surround you. Your colleagues, your competitors, your allies, your enemies. Every single person who has ever interacted with you has built a version of you inside their head, a narrative, a character. And here is the brutal truth that Machiavelli understood centuries before the modern world had language for it. If you are not actively authoring that narrative, someone else is writing it for you, and they are not writing it in your favor. This is not about image management in the shallow, superficial sense. This is not about performing a character for social approval or crafting a fake persona to impress people who don't matter. This is about something far more strategic and far more fundamental. Understanding that perception is reality in the social and political world. And the man who controls how he is perceived controls the entire dynamic of every relationship, every room, and every situation he walks into. The prince who allowed others to define him was always the prince who ended up being defined as weak, as manipulable, as replaceable. The prince who controlled his own narrative, who decided what people saw, what they knew, what they feared, and what they respected about him. That prince held power that no external force could easily dismantle. Think about the narrative currently attached to your name. What do people say when you are not in the room? What is the first word that comes to mind when someone who knows you thinks of you? Is it sharp? Is it composed? Is it dangerous in the quiet, respected way that makes people think twice before they move against you? Or is it something else? Predictable, emotional, readable, someone whose buttons are known and pressed regularly by people who have figured out exactly how to get a reaction from you. Be honest, because the answer to that question is not just about reputation. It is about the quality of every opportunity, every alliance, and every confrontation that is coming toward you in the future. The strategist understands that every interaction is a brushstroke on the canvas of his narrative. The way he enters a room, unhurried, deliberate, taking up space without demanding attention. The way he speaks, measured, low, with the confidence of a man who has never needed volume to be heard. The way he handles public pressure without flinching, without over-explaining, without the desperate scramble to make sure everyone understands his side of the story immediately. Every one of these moments is a deposit into the account of perception. And over time, those deposits compound into something formidable, a reputation so solid, so consistent, so carefully constructed that it begins to work for you even when you are not in the room. Machiavelli was clear. It is better to be feared than loved, but the wisest men engineered both. They created a narrative that made people want to be close to them while simultaneously making people afraid of what crossing them would cost. That is not contradiction. That is mastery. It is the ability to be magnetic and dangerous at the same time, approachable enough that people open up and reveal themselves, and formidable enough that they never forget there are consequences for betrayal or disrespect. Control the story before the story controls you. Decide right now what your presence communicates before you even speak. Decide what your silence implies. Decide what your composure signals. Decide what your name means when it lands in a conversation you are not part of. Because all of that is a choice, and the man who refuses to make that choice consciously is making it unconsciously, which means he is making it badly. Your narrative is either your armor or your vulnerability. Build it with intention or wear the consequences without complaint. Comment, "I control my narrative right now," because from this moment forward, that is exactly what you do. Number 7, strategy over speed, patience over impulse. The modern world has weaponized urgency against you. Everything moves fast. Notifications, deadlines, reactions, responses. The entire infrastructure of the world you live in is designed to make you feel like slowing down is losing. Like thinking before acting is hesitation, like patience is passivity dressed up in a more acceptable name. And so you rush. You respond before you've processed. You move before you've mapped. You make decisions at the speed of emotion rather than the speed of strategy. And then you spend weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, cleaning up the wreckage of a moment that needed 30 seconds of stillness instead of 30 seconds of reaction. The world profits from your impatience. Your enemies certainly do. Machiavelli watched this pattern destroy men who should have been untouchable. Men with resources, with influence, with every structural advantage available to them, undone not by superior opposition, but by their own inability to wait. Their own compulsive need to act before the moment was ripe. To force outcomes before the conditions supported them. To respond to provocations that were specifically designed to pull them off their long game and drag them into a short one. Because here is what every skilled manipulator, every political predator, every person who has ever wanted to destabilize a powerful man understands. You cannot defeat a patient man on his own timeline. So you make him abandon his timeline. You provoke him. You pressure him. You create artificial urgency that pulls him away from his strategy and onto your battlefield where you have already prepared the ground. The strategist refuses that invitation every single time, not because he lacks urgency. He carries an intense burning drive beneath the surface that most people never get to see, but because he understands the difference between urgency of purpose and urgency of reaction. His purpose moves with absolute relentless momentum. His reactions move at the speed of calculation. These are two completely different engines running simultaneously inside the same man. One that never stops pushing toward the objective, and one that never allows external pressure to dictate the timing of his moves. Patience at this level is not a passive virtue. It is an aggressive one. It is the choice to hold your position while the other side exhausts themselves, reveals themselves, overextends themselves. It is the discipline to watch someone lay a trap and walk calmly around it rather than spring it with the satisfying but catastrophically expensive release of immediate reaction. It is the ability to absorb a provocation, file it, remember it, and respond to it 6 months later when the timing serves you completely rather than them. Cold, calculated on your terms at your moment with maximum effect. That is not weakness. That is the most ruthless form of power that exists. Think about every major mistake you have made in your life. Strip away the details, the specific circumstances, the people involved, and look at the underlying mechanism. The overwhelming majority of those mistakes share a single common ancestor. You moved too fast. You spoke when silence would have served you. You decided when more information was still available. You reacted when strategy required waiting. Speed felt like strength in those moments. It always does. That is the trap. Real strength in the domain of power and strategy almost always looks slower than it feels because it is operating on a timeline that extends far beyond the moment of provocation, far beyond the immediate satisfaction of response, and into the future where outcomes are actually decided. The greatest strategists in history were not the most aggressive. They were the most patient. They were the men who could sit with discomfort, with uncertainty, with the unbearable feeling of not yet acting and remain composed, remain focused, remain locked onto the long game while everyone around them was burning their futures on the satisfaction of the present moment. Slow down, think deeper, move later, hit harder. Drop I play the long game in the comments because that single mindset shift will separate you from every reactive, impatient, easily manipulated man around you. Number 8, the power of selective trust and strategic alliances. Trust is not a virtue in the world of power. It is a resource, and like every resource, it must be managed, allocated, and protected with the same cold precision you would apply to anything else of extraordinary value. The man who trusts freely, openly, and emotionally, who hands his vulnerabilities to people simply because they smiled at the right moment, or said the right words, or showed up consistently for a few weeks. That man is not loyal. He is not open-hearted. He is dangerously naive in a world that will exploit that naivety without hesitation and without guilt. Machiavelli did not say trust no one because he was cynical. He said it because he was paying attention. Here is the architecture of how betrayal actually works. And understanding this will permanently change how you build relationships. Nobody announces their intention to betray you. Nobody sits across from you and says, I am here to extract what I need and disappear when it no longer serves me. Instead, they build, they invest time, they offer help. They create a sense of reciprocity and mutual loyalty that feels real because, on the surface, it behaves exactly like the real thing. The difference between genuine alliance and strategic positioning is almost invisible in the early stages. And that is precisely why it is so effective. By the time the mask comes off, you have already given away too much. You have shared information that can be used against you. You have revealed weaknesses that can be exploited. You have built a dependency that can be leveraged. And now the person who built that access walks away with everything they came for. While you stand there trying to reconcile the person, you thought they were with the person they just revealed themselves to be. The strategist does not build walls around himself out of bitterness or fear. He builds them out of architecture. He understands that access to him is a privilege that must be earned across time, across pressure, across moments where the other person had every opportunity to betray him and chose not to. He watches how people behave when there is nothing to gain. He watches how they speak about others who are no longer in the room. Because the way a man talks about absent people is a precise preview of how he will talk about you the moment you become absent. He watches how they handle their own failures with honesty and accountability, or with deflection and blame that always somehow lands on someone else. These are the diagnostics. These are the tests that most people never realize they are taking. Machiavelli understood that the wise prince kept his circle sufficiently small that every person inside it carried real weight and real consequence. A large circle is not power, it is exposure. Every additional person who has intimate access to your thinking, your plans, your fears, and your vulnerabilities is an additional attack surface. The most powerful men in history were not surrounded by crowds of allies. They were surrounded by a carefully selected few whose loyalty had been tested, whose interests were genuinely aligned, and whose betrayal would cost them as much as it costs the prince. That alignment of consequence is the closest thing to reliable trust that the world of power actually offers. Build your alliances the way an architect builds load-bearing walls, not everywhere, but exactly where the structure needs them, with materials that have been tested for strength before they are trusted with weight. Let people prove themselves in small things before you expose them to large ones. Give selective information and watch what they do with it. Observe the consistency between their public face and their private behavior. And when someone shows you who they are, not who they claim to be, but who they actually are in an unguarded moment, believe them immediately and adjust accordingly without drama, without confrontation, without giving them the intelligence that you have seen through them. Your circle is your fortress wall. Guard it like your survival depends on it because in the world of power, it absolutely does. Comment. My circle is my power right now because the people around you will either build you or quietly dismantle you, and you now know the difference. Number 9, become the man they cannot figure out. Predictability is a cage you build around yourself with your own habits. Every time you respond the same way to the same trigger, every time your pattern is readable, every time someone can finish your sentence before you open your mouth, you have handed them a blueprint of your mind. And a blueprint is all an enemy needs to dismantle the entire structure. The most dangerous man in any room is never the loudest, never the most aggressive, never the one performing strength for an audience that stopped believing the performance long ago. The most dangerous man is the one nobody can fully figure out. The one who keeps people slightly off balance, not through chaos or instability, but through a composed, deliberate, calculated unpredictability that makes him impossible to map, impossible to predict, and therefore impossible to manipulate. Machiavelli understood this at a level that most modern men have completely lost access to. He wrote about the necessity of being both the lion and the fox. The lion to crush what threatens you openly, and the fox to navigate what threatens you invisibly. Most men are only one of these. The aggressive man is all lion, powerful in direct confrontation, but blind to the traps being laid around him because he cannot think beyond force. The overly cautious man is all fox, clever at avoiding danger, but incapable of the decisive, overwhelming action that sometimes the moment demands. The truly untouchable man carries both simultaneously, deploying whichever the situation requires while never fully revealing which one he is reaching for. That duality makes him genuinely unpredictable, not erratic, not unstable, but fluid in a way that keeps every opponent permanently uncertain. Uncertainty is power. When people cannot predict you, they cannot prepare for you. When they cannot prepare for you, they are always slightly reactive in your presence, always waiting to see what you will do next, rather than executing a plan they have already built around your predictable behavior. You shift from being someone they manage to being someone they navigate carefully. That shift in dynamic changes everything. It changes how they speak to you, how they position themselves around you, how much respect they extend before you have even demanded it. The way you build this is through conscious variation in your responses, not randomness. Randomness is just confusion with no strategic value. Variation. Sometimes you respond to provocation with complete silence. Sometimes with a single calm sentence that ends the conversation entirely. Sometimes with unexpected humor that deflates the aggressor and repositions you as someone above the conflict. Sometimes with a directness so sharp and unhesitating that it stops people cold. The pattern they cannot find is the pattern that protects you. Become the question they cannot answer. Become the variable they cannot solve for. Become the man who walks into every situation as something entirely new because that man is never owned, never predicted, and never ever controlled. Comment: you cannot figure me out because that is now your greatest protection. Number 10, the untouchable man is built, not born. Everything you have heard in this video, every principle, every cold truth, every layer of Machiavellian strategy and dark psychology, none of it means anything if it stays inside your ears and never travels down into your bones. Knowledge without application is just entertainment, and you did not come here to be entertained. You came here because something inside you already knew that the way you have been operating is not the way a man of real power operates. You came here because you felt the gap between who you are right now and who you are capable of becoming. And that gap has been bothering you in the quiet moments, in the moments between sleep and waking, in the moments when you are completely honest with yourself about what your life looks like versus what it should look like. That discomfort is not weakness. That discomfort is the signal that you are ready. Nobody is born untouchable. Nobody arrives in this world with a mind already forged into a strategic weapon, with emotions already mastered, with perception already sharpened to the level that reads rooms and people and power dynamics before they fully unfold. Every man who has ever achieved that level of cold, composed, genuine power built it deliberately, painfully through years of catching himself reacting and choosing differently. Through years of sitting in discomfort instead of running from it. Through years of studying human nature with the clinical detachment of a man who understands that the world is exactly as it is, not as he wishes it to be, and that wishing changes nothing while strategy changes everything. The man you are becoming does not seek validation from the room. He does not need the approval of people who have not done the work he has done. He does not explain himself to those who are not positioned to understand him. He moves in a direction that most people around him cannot see yet because he is operating from a vision, from a strategy, from a long game that extends far beyond the moment he is currently standing in. He is patient when everything around him screams urgency. He is silent when everything around him rewards noise. He is composed when everything around him is designed to provoke reaction. And over time, not overnight, not in a week, but over the sustained, relentless application of everything that has been laid out in this video, he becomes something that the world has very few words for and an enormous amount of respect for. That man is you, not tomorrow, not when the conditions are perfect. Starting from the decision you make in the next 60 seconds about whether you are going to carry what you learned here into the way you actually live or leave it behind in this video like every other piece of content you consumed and forgot. Make the decision, build the fortress. Become untouchable. Drop "I am the fortress" in the comments right now because that is not just a phrase. That is a declaration of the man you have decided to become. And if this video moved something in you, if it shifted your thinking, sharpened your mind, or showed you something about power and strategy that you needed to hear, then hit that like button, subscribe to Mental Fort, and turn on notifications. Because what was built in this video is just the beginning of what is coming. The men who stay will become something the men who leave will eventually envy. The fortress is built one decision at a time. Start now.